Hey guys, welcome back to the Chase Life with Kelly podcast. As you know, I am your host, Kelly Chase, and I have one of my most precious friends with me today on the show. Her name is Kiera Palmer. She is a local Atlanta girl. We met probably 10 years ago.
Long time.
Yeah, probably about 10 years ago. But wanted to have her on the podcast for multiple reasons. She is like the definition of just like resilience.
Seriously.
She is. I remember sitting with Kiera at True Food Kitchen at the bar one time for dinner, and that was like one of our first like meetups back then. I mean, like 10 years ago. And I think you were over your 9 to 5, or you were about to leave, or you had just left.
I think it was right before I left. I think we were like I think that was right in the transition phase. Like I was overwhelmed, like it was just nonsense. And then you and I got to talking, and it was like, what, 3 hours we sat there or something like that? It was crazy. It was such a good conversation, but that was kind of the catalyst to our blooming friendship.
Yeah, it was. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here for you to be here. I'm so happy to be here in the studio, guys. I am in our new studio.
I know, wild, right?
Yeah. Like for real, it's so pretty in here. If you are in Atlanta, I'm just gonna plug this real quick. If you're in Atlanta, definitely come check out the studio at the Social.
Yes, it's called the Social Studio, and it's in Chamblee, which is right on the outskirts of Brookhaven, Buckhead area. And it is obviously a place to come record your podcast. And it's also a place to come get content, creative content studio, and you can also rent it for small events.
I love that.
Very exciting.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. You've been along the entire journey.
I know. It's so cool to
Yeah.
cool to watch, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Literally, you were just telling me, how proud of you.
I know. I was like, gosh, girl, you're killing it. I'm so proud of you. You really, it's amazing to watch somebody that you love so much just shine the way you are right now. So that's incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know. I'm like, yeah, see your like reels recently, and I'm like, she's doing so good, and it looks so good, like aesthetically. Like you're like in the studio too. I'm like, yeah, it's so pretty.
You don't have to worry about like the back room of your house being cluttered. You know, just have a space where you can come and pop in here, and it's always perfect.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to just put up a camera and record.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It really is gorgeous. Well, okay, so I want to hear your story, because I like learning about people's stories because it gives so much context. I think story is what is so impactful. I mean, the things that you can take away just as the listener, it can be very cathartic, very healing, as well as you may just like resonate really hard with who I'm interviewing and be able to say like, wow, that just hit me. Maybe I need to make a shift. Maybe I need to make a little like pivot in my life, and maybe I can be doing something like that too, and just really go after your dreams like Miss Kiera here. So I want you to start from, I guess, just kind of the beginning. Like, I mean, again, you've gone from corporate into being literally a serial entrepreneur. I mean, you've started multiple businesses to like women's, networking,
it's a little wild because, when you look back on like where you were, it's crazy because sometimes, if anybody's listening and you go on this entrepreneurial journey, sometimes it gets tough and you get to these points and you're like, oh, I should be doing more, and oh, I should be here, and And then if you just take a second to step back and look where you are, and then you realize that you're living this dream that you only used to like have a thought about years ago. So that, that's been something that I've been trying to focus on recently, and we'll get there. But, I, like most people, grew up and, got to get A's in high school because you got to get into college, and you got to go to college and get the degree so you can get the good job and all that. And I mean, not that that is wrong. I mean, I think that's a great thing to strive for. But so I did that, and I left. I actually thought I was going to go to law school. So that was the plan.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the plan. My senior year of college, I was at the University of Georgia, which is in Athens, Georgia, which is about an hour away from Atlanta. And I drove from Athens to Atlanta Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, my second semester of senior year, and I worked at the Capitol And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would finish my class. So I was trying to get down there and meet people because I was like, I'm going to law school, so do like get doing all that stuff. So, but that semester, working down at the Capitol and seeing all that, and then how late lawyers worked and all that stuff, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do the LSAT anymore. I don't know if I I don't want to apply to school anymore. I just didn't want to do it. So then I stumbled into, I don't know, it was one of those things you just like flip a switch.
Yeah.
I was like, nope, not doing that anymore. And that was kind of been my plan for years, right? So one of my sorority sisters, funny enough, her, you have these like parent weekends or whatever. So like I knew her parents really well. And they were in the insurance industry. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Her dad was like, we're hiring someone right out of college. Why don't you come interview? And of course I had the thought of like insurance, question mark, but it was kind of exciting because it was different. It was high risk commercial property. So think terrorism, hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, like things that are very high risk to insure because at some point there's probably going to be damage. So anyway, I thought that sounded cool. I didn't know what else I was going to do, so I took the job and started the Monday after I graduated.
Wow.
And then I stayed there in that career for over 11 years and built that career. Yeah. So I was Miss Corporate, like pencil skirt, Louboutins, corner office, big title, big paycheck, and worked an insane amount of hours, and I was miserable. I don't think that it was such it wasn't a good atmosphere, a lot of not so great things happening around, personnel, and a lot of client dinners where you're drinking too much and just all that. So there's probably like the last 2 years that I was in that industry. I knew that there was something else. I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know that I wanted to start my own things. I didn't know what career field I wanted to go into. And that's really hard to be at that point when you're like, okay, I've just spent years at building this career and sweat and tears too, So it's really hard to say that you're going to walk away from all that. That's tough.
Yeah.
So the catalyst that actually got me here was do you remember back when Instagram started, how easy that platform was? You just post a pretty picture and you got followers. Yes, really easy.
Nice.
Yeah, those were really good. It was all my friends at right? First, yeah, exactly. Actually, funny. I was in Paris in 2011, I think, when I joined Instagram, and I remember the first photo is me looking out on the Louvre with my friend, and I don't think there's a single like on it, because nobody was on the platform.
Right. Wow.
So anyway, flash forward to 2015. I was like, oh my gosh, these travel bloggers are so cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a travel blogger so bad because they're, all you see is them prancing around the world, taking pretty pictures and being paid for it.
Yeah.
And so of course I'm like, I'm going to do that. Wait, how do I do that if I can't even take vacation from my job?
Right.
So, that last year I was like, okay, I have traveled a bit and I've taken some cool pictures. So I'm going to plan some more trips. I'm going to get a ton of content and I'll just start doing that. And that's how I started in social media.
Wow.
And my account, which was called The Blonderer.
That's right. I do remember.
It isn't an active account, so it's not, I don't post on there anymore, but I got it up to 45,000 followers.
Wow.
And had some really cool shout outs and partnerships. Delta Airlines was using my stuff. Yeah, all over.
You shared that recently.
I mean, they had I was on their in-flight entertainment, Sky Magazine, all of their social media ads. It was really cool. So that was obviously a lot of help with my growth. But and then because I had people who saw me doing that, they're like, hey, can you do my account too? We'll pay you. And that is how I got into social media management. I was completely self-taught. So you're probably guessing I did quit my job and I had something to fall back on to, it was a little bit of a path because I did take a job in between because I didn't know what to do. I quit my job and I had no idea what I was going to do. And I didn't work for 5 months.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you realize that. I didn't work for 5 months. And I think we may have talked about it at that time, but it was one of those things where I was just kind of lost, I didn't know where I was going.
I understand
and you've been there, haven't we all, where you kind of make this knee-jerk reaction. And there was I had gone that last year in that career, I had gone to work for a client, and this client of mine did not have the best reputation, and I knew that, but I had worked for such a difficult boss already. I thought that I could handle it, and it was another big pay raise. I mean, it's hard to turn down that kind of money. And so, but it was really, really toxic and really inappropriate and really, just really terrible. And something happened and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I quit the next day.
Wow.
I mean, so anyway, that's kind of how I got into the entrepreneur space. I was corporate. I was miserable. I didn't spend any time with my family. I barely took vacation. I worked crazy amount of hours. I mean, I felt like every month I was probably in the office every other Saturday, you know, and things like that. So I was so sad, you know, and like empty. I felt like there was no purpose. Why am I working this hard if there's no life, you know?
Absolutely.
So just wanted something to do that would bring me joy and that I enjoyed doing, felt like there was some purpose, and then gave me my life back. And because I had been doing that little thing on the side, when it was time, you know, I quit the job. I didn't know what I was going to do because I honestly didn't really understand that social media management had become a career, because it was such in the early stages of Instagram and all that. I mean, there was no TikTok, there were no reels, there were none of this stuff at that time. So I ended up taking actually another job for a little while. But then the social media stuff was building up. I started the Women Project back then, which was a women's entrepreneurial organization. So then I guess in 2019 is when I left that and then went full time on my own, and, you know, told everybody that I knew that I was now doing social media management, and clients came running in from referrals, and
It's amazing.
I had replaced my corporate salary within, I mean, I think it was 4 months.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then that has been a huge shift, and that's what I do now. And and we can go into that, but now I have the studio. Now we're launching Limitless Women. So, it's been a little bit of a long-winded, obviously, story, but, I think that sometimes when you can when you can have that self-identifying moment of, this is not for me, and no amount of money is going to fix this.
Yeah.
And you and I both know how short life is, and you shouldn't waste it. There should not be a single moment more that you waste on spending time doing something that you hate. If you can get to that point, I think you have to make the jump. You have to, and figure it out. And a lot of times I would not suggest doing what I did. I would not suggest just quitting a job without, a plan, but that was my story, and that is what I did. And I'm very thankful for that, because it kind of pushed me into figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yes, I left corporate 2017, but I was, to pursue health coaching at the time, right? But I was also working for an all audio-based fitness app, and that's why I could leave, because I was getting enough income per month to at least pay my bills. Right. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I'll just make the health coaching income on top of that, right? But, I was in that for a year, a little over a year. I did that. And then we filmed Love is Blind. In that year and a half, basically, we then filmed Love is Blind, and I was still working for the all audio-based fitness app. But January, I think we got done filming in November. Come January, they let the Atlanta fitness trainers go. And I was like, shit. And my health coaching at the time, I didn't have a client at all, because I was just in chaos, mental chaos after filming the show, that I was like, I can't even, sometimes felt like I couldn't get out of bed. It was a really sad, depressing time for me. So I was like, oh my God, now I just lost my job. Now I have no money. Yes. Great. Yes. Wonderful. And I've racked up debt because of things that whole previous year of not being, although I was employed, but contract employee and whatever, but it was a lot. But after the show aired, a whole year went by. I was working corporate when the show aired. And
because I remember when it was coming out, we were all like, wait, it was such a long time in between when you filmed and when it was released.
That was 16 months, I think, something like that.
Crazy.
Yeah. But it was nuts, after the show, to just relate to what you're saying about kind of just not having a plan and jumping. So yes, after the show aired, I mean, I gained this whole influencer title, and I'm like, oh my God, I have another job on top of my full time, on top of my business. on top of trying to date, on top of trying to hang out with family, like, holy shit. So like a whole year, I stuck with all of that. I was so burned out. I was not healthy. I mean, I should probably talk about that more on
You
social
should.
media, but I mean, I was
Well,
like,
because those moments, I mean,
not okay.
I mean, I know you remember this, but there was that year, and that was right around when, like, I quit my job, didn't know what I was gonna do, all that stuff, and that sudden realization of, oh shit, what did I just do?
Right.
You know, and then I didn't have, I mean, I had like maybe $500 coming in from one person who I was helping with social media back then, but I was blowing through my savings because I wasn't working, right? And so, but I was so depressed about, I just quit my job. I know I'm very capable of doing things, but I don't know what it is yet. And so I remember I gained like 40 pounds. Do you remember that? Like, yeah. So, and it was weird because it wasn't because I was like eating Cheetos every day or, you know, not working out. It wasn't anything like that. I think when you get into those emotional, depressive moments, like your hormones get all out of balance. And I mean, just
Absolutely,
as you are very well aware of, because you're more of an expert in that space, obviously, but, you know, and once that stuck around for about a year and a half, that weight. And then once I started getting into my groove of what I was doing, and then it fell back. So, that kind of relate to what you just said so much about just being in a depressive, maybe I don't even want to get out of bed state. And it's so weird to say that out loud, especially with you and me, just knowing both of our personalities, that anyone, I mean, that I think that's really important to talk about, because like we can all be there, right? And just because you are there, if you're going through it, doesn't mean there's not something unbelievable on the other side, you know. And you know, I've been going through a really tough time this year with just getting the studio open. I had no idea the journey that this was about to take me on. You know, I thought I had this brilliant idea in December. I signed a lease in January. The studio was ready in 4 weeks. I thought the first week of March we were opening, and we didn't open until 2 weeks ago, which was like July 1st, basically. And so 7 months of paying rent, utilities, all of these things, and having my hands tied. And that, I tell you what, when you're a business person and you've worked really hard for something, and just seeing like all of your cash drain when you're trying and you're ready to go, it's like you're handcuffed, right?
Yeah.
And that's really tough, and the ups and downs, and it's really tough. And I remember during these last few months, like thinking about that time when I quit my job and not knowing, and that really that stressful, depressive state, and how I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I kept like thinking back to that moment, and wondering, okay, what was it that I was doing that pulled me out of it? And what was it, you know, even though I'm in a much better space now, obviously, because I still have my social media management company and all that stuff, but it's really hard when you feel like you don't have control over a situation when you're trying so hard. So, you know, going through that, it's just a really good example. And I always think of people like Sarah Blakely and all these people who went through all these really tough times, or Mosey, who talks about how he had to sleep in his gym and things like that, you know. And those are the kind of things that really, I think those stories, which you just said, I should share more of these stories. And I absolutely agree with you, because it helps people like me. It helps people like you. It helps people like who are listening to your podcast right now, you know, see past that, you know, and say, okay, this is my present moment, but I know that this right here, I think you even said this the other day, and these moments, this is what separates people, right? This is what separates the people who fail and the people who become wildly successful, because those moments get so hard. That's when people quit. Because you feel like you can't take it anymore. And, you know, and like, why do I even do this? You know? And so I think that you can find some sort of resilience, like you were saying before, to just say, this is the season, this is where I'm at, and how do I take that next step? And you don't have to take 10 steps forward. You just have to take the next step forward.
Absolutely.
And keep, you know, telling yourself that, again, this is where most people quit, but you are not going to. You are not going to quit. You're not going. And then you get on to the other side and you take this deep breath and you're like, holy shit, I just got through that. Holy shit, I just started this amazing thing. Oh, and I know we're cussing. Sorry about that. Okay. But yeah, I feel like holy shit, I did it. I did it, you know, and I think that's really powerful. And honestly, I say all the time, like, if you don't have those experiences, how do you, I mean, I feel like you almost, it's part of the journey. Like you have to have,
Right. I
Almost. Do
know.
you feel that way a little bit?
Yeah, well, I feel sometimes, like many of us think that my problem isn't big enough to like talk about it, or like just because like I've been in and out of obviously I've done coaching, I've worked with a lot of or been in coaching like mentorship programs with like whether it was like network marketing or coaching, right? And all of our business mentors have always said like everyone has a story to share, and that's like what some of the clients on the call would say like, yeah, but I feel like I've lived a really great life. Like I don't feel like I've had, so and so was, left by their dad when they were 2 years old. So and so's mom passed away. Like they've endured more big T traumas versus like little T traumas. And so they don't think that their story is good enough. And then it reflects back to like, well, who am I to share my story when someone over here that's really like they've been homeless, they've been like really through the ringer. So, but any story can be relatable,
I think
every story is so impactful.
Like even past bad relationships or friendships and things that like didn't go right. I mean, like obviously Kelly just mentioned this under her breath, but I lost my mom to breast cancer when I was in high school. And I think you don't want to say like, oh, I'm grateful that that's crazy. You would never say that. But I think because of that, and because of that really hard time in my life, it's been almost a shining light for me now, where I'm like, okay, girl, you've survived much worse than this,
Totally.
and those things do shape people. But even being in, say you date somebody who's a complete narcissist, I mean, that can really mess you up, as we both know.
Yes.
And then that takes a period of time of recovery and finding yourself over again, or so you can, maybe that's it, or maybe it's the job that took everything out of you and changed who you were because it just drained every piece of personality that you had. Everybody has something, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. I think sometimes people are scared to talk about it because they don't, like you just said, they don't think that it's like big enough, or they don't think it's like a good enough part of their story.
Right. Yeah. It's like they just have like an insecurity that again, it's like not good enough. And I think it relates to, your inner dialogue of like, I'm not good enough.
Oh my God. And don't we all do that?
Yes. I mean, I do all the time.
Yes. I mean, daily. I've done that this week.
Yeah.
I mean,
same.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that and I don't know if you've ever felt this way, so I'd be interested to hear but I think you probably have. But like when you're watching people in your space, and this is why, like, I love social media. I think it does really great things for people, but social media can also be like incredibly mentally damaging to yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you're watching people in your space and they're doing all these incredible things, and I feel like you can make a really good point to this. So I want you to elaborate on that if you don't mind. I know you're interviewing me, but like you have some really good. Yeah, like I think you have some really good insight to this, because I just recently have found myself in that comparison trap, and talking about what we were just talking about, like my story's not good enough or something like that. I think a lot of people don't go after kind of what you're saying for like their dreams, and they don't chase things and all that because A, they don't think their story is good enough, A. B, maybe they are afraid of what others are going to think, and B, they just get in that constant hamster wheel of comparison. And what you don't see is the ugly, right? I mean, I've been through so much this year, but I didn't really post about it on Instagram. So like if you didn't know me personally, you wouldn't even know that was going on. Just all of a sudden I had this new business and I mean, but you didn't see me crying in bed at night and not knowing what was going to happen the next day and fighting with the city, and like, I mean, showing up at city council meetings and fight and just how horrible that was. And so going back to the comparison thing, you don't see the ugly. No one has it figured out the way that you think that they do. I mean, even the people that we deeply admire who are multimillionaires, they didn't know what they were doing. They had a rough start. They had a rough path. They still have rough times, and no one really has it all figured out, right? And so I think that that's part of the struggle with a lot of people, is that it is a hamster wheel of comparison. You're just going round and round and round and wondering why you're not there, and wondering why it's so hard for you, and wondering why you keep having these roller coaster moments when you're not seeing that everybody else is too. And maybe they've just been doing it 10 years longer than you have.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, my experience with that like comparison, it was so big. Mostly I felt like I was good like before filming Love is Blind. Love is Blind kind of fucked me up.
Yeah.
In many ways, it was great. Love it. So
Yeah.
great. So many opportunities
Yeah.
came from it. Super grateful to don't regret it at all, but it did fuck me up. And it was interesting. I'll come back to the comparison, but I will make a note of this. Like when I did that well-being mental health event in New York City, my like our like manager for our cast from Love is Blind was there speaking on the panel. And they asked me a question like, did you, were you challenged after the show? And I was like, yeah, and I started crying because I'm just like not through it sometimes. And it's just a very heavy topic for me still.
Yeah.
And literally I was sitting 2 seats away from her, and she just looked at me afterwards, and not afterwards, like presence, like before they asked anyone else another question on the panel. She was like, I just want to like say, like, one, I am so sorry that you had to experience such challenges after the show. She goes, two, I want to point out the pandemic happened during Kelly's season. All of us thought we were going to be dying. Like, so for us to like organize mental health support, we all needed mental health support. She was like, so we, I'm sorry we failed you. And it was like such a powerful moment, but I was so happy to have just shared without fear. Yeah. Knowing she was sitting right there, and I was anxious knowing that she was coming. I was like, oh crap, like we haven't really talked.
Powerful that you did that.
And when she said that to me, I like, not that I was like ashamed of what I had just said, but I was like, holy shit, I didn't even think about that. Like, I was just like, oh, they didn't help me. Oh, they didn't give me support. Oh, they didn't help me like build my brand. Like it was me. And I was like, whoa. And so later that night, we all went and like met and had cocktails and stuff. And I was like, thank you for saying what you did, because it shifted something inside of me. And I just want to say, I'm sorry that like, although you didn't know what was mentally going on in my head, but I was like anxious. And she was like, I was kind of anxious to like see you because I thought that we had bad blood just because of everything. And I was like, no, we don't. I thought you had bad blood with me because I was like pronouncing exactly the truth of Love is Blind on the internet. That was not favored. She was like, no. But it was just like, I was just like, wow, what a shift. Like to actually communicate and have the other person's perspective. I was like, shit, Kel. Like,
did you feel like fearless in that? Like
I did
anything?
Yeah.
Like I just like was honest in front of the person who put me on the show. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was wonderful. And now we've like reconnected and it's beautiful now. And I love it. I'm like, wow, power of communication. I know I preach it all the time, but I'm still human and I don't do it as well as I should sometimes. But anyways, going back to the comparison, after the show after we got done filming, I started to pivot my business a little bit. So I was like straight up like health and nutrition, fitness, like for years, because that's what I was, a health coach. And then after the show filmed, I hired a business and mindset coach, Erin. And I worked with her for 4 months and I was like, I don't know what she did to me, but I need to do what you do. I was so like, we were talking about money mindset, like basically health. As I learned when I got certified as a health coach in 2014 or 13, like health is everything. It's your financial health, it's your home health, your environment, everything, relationships, career, everything. I was focused on one little triangle of the pie, and it was just the fitness and nutrition more or less. So we started diving into the relationships, financial, career, business, all of that. And I was like, holy shit. And she just did so much for me. And I was like, I want to change. So then I start talking like on Instagram about business strategy and money mindset and just being an entrepreneur. And my like engagement started to drop. And I was like, what the heck? But I'm like, obviously I'm connected with all these other like business coaches. And I'm like, well, they have this strong following. Like, why am I not like, why are people not engaging? Like, this is really powerful shit. But I was just talking to the wrong audience. Like I built, these people were looking for recipes and exercise, workouts. So that was hard for me then. And I had to step back into the corporate space. I've been in and out of it 3 times now, but because I was like, I don't have any money. I have nothing coming in, no clients. Had I just stuck with it? Yeah, sure. But I was so like insecure and not nervous system just pretty dysregulated at that point. But after the show aired, that's when I feel like literally the last 6 months of this year. So 2024, 4 years after the show aired, these last 4 years, I have been, yes, authentic, but not fully authentic.
Mhm, mhm.
And I know that I was influenced by some of my castmates,
Yeah.
other people from like the Bachelor world, other people that are gajillionaires and have ridiculous followings. And I'm like, oh, they got a lot of likes. Maybe I'll create something like that too and just post that. And
Yeah.
you know, sometimes like
Yeah.
it would be fine and whatnot. The engagement would be what I felt was good enough, you know,
Right.
but other times it would totally flop. And I would like, I remember looking back, I can look back. I didn't delete anything because I was like, Kelly, it's your journey, you know?
Oh, yes, girl.
But I
Yes.
did look back at stuff and I was like, ew. Like
I think
that just
I'll do
doesn't
that.
feel me.
Yeah.
And I feel like these last 6 months, maybe even the last like 3 to 4 months, I have felt more like me. I'm just like, fuck it. I have so much going on right now. And maybe that's why I'm like trying to do all these different opportunities to make myself more present
Mhm.
so that I don't have time to consume other
Yeah.
people's stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I think it shows because I mean, even when you got here, I'm like, just so proud of you doing all these things. Like, you're just glowing, you know?
Thank you.
But and I want to add something too for, you know, the people who are listening, because one thing I can give you some information on in terms of social media, because that's my career. Back when Reels came out, what was I, like 2, 3 years ago? It shifted the way that people consumed social media.
Mhm.
And if you were one of the lucky people who exploded when Reels first came out, and I mean, this is one of the things because I was running other people's social media accounts, I wasn't doing them myself. I was like, I am not going to spend all this time on these. I had no idea what I was missing. I mean, I did because I was doing them for other people, but I didn't want to do them. So like, I missed that boat. I'm like that immediate. I should have been on it. I knew what I was doing. I should have been capitalizing on that. But I wanted to say, like, you were just said something that like kind of hit me a little bit, because I've done it too, and I'm sure everybody listening to this does it too, where you see where they do something, they're like, why do they have all these views when this is not like a super entertaining piece of content? Or
Mhm.
they have tons of views, this is a really cool piece of content, whatever, and you want to recreate it, whatever. So if you're not getting the followers that you want, and you're not getting the engagement you want, and your views are super low down, I just want you to remember that, think about how you consume social media. And like, if you're scrolling, the platforms want to keep you on for as long as possible. That's how they grow. That's how they make their money, because they get ads and things like that. Then the statistic of engagement and following all this stuff has dropped so dramatically over the last 2 years, because they're showing you 50% of the time stuff you don't follow.
Right.
So you're inundated by all of this new stuff, all the time, all these new trends, all these new trending audios. I mean, you're just constantly being pushed this new information. So your brain starts to get into this wiring of like, I gotta be doing this, and I gotta be doing this, and I gotta be doing this, and why am I not seeing the results? And you start jumping around, and a lot of it is luck. I mean, I know that some social media strategists will want to be like, don't say that, you can totally get us out of a job. But I mean, just as an example, I have a reel that is going viral right now. As of this morning, it had 1.4 million views. Today, Sharon Stone liked it and shared it to her stories, which is crazy.
Wow.
But
cool.
I mean, I did the things that, I mean, all the rules that you're supposed to follow with like social media and stuff like that, the way you post, the way you pick trending audios and da. I didn't do a single one of those things on that post, except it was an inspirational post. That was it. It was original audio. It should not have taken off. That was a luck of the draw, because it picked up quickly, and people, it had an emotional attachment, and people were sharing it, and that's how it went viral. So I know that was a long-winded way of saying, but like, if you're in that comparison mode, which we've been talking about, where you're on that hamster wheel, and it's either, I mean, actually, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with social media. And you're thinking, why am I not getting the views? Why am I not getting followers? Or I should be doing this. Let me copy what they're doing or recreate that and all that. That's what they want you to do. They want you to stay on the app, and it will mess you up in the mind. But I just want you to remember that that is on purpose. The algorithms do that on purpose. People consume social media so much differently now. I mean, I even think about sometimes where if I'll be scrolling and I'll pass somebody that I know, I'm like, I watch it and I keep going, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even like, I got to go back and like hit the like button. Because we're consuming different.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
it's an interesting place. I mean, there's a lot of obviously talk around mental health and social media and all that stuff too. And of course, like I said, I mean, I've built an entire career around it. So I'm thankful for it. But, we were talking about comparing yourself and not feeling good enough, and not feeling prepared enough, and maybe your story's not good enough. What am I going to share on the platform and all that? It's just a totally normal thing to feel. Because it is a completely overwhelming thing that we have in our lives now, I mean, think about you when you and I were in college, that's when Facebook started. Like, we got to go through like teenage years and the first half of, our college or whatever without having to deal with this nonsense. And even when it started, it was just people in college, and it was just Facebook, and it was just this. And so it was, I think we're kind of like the last generation that got lucky. And even now as adults, we're struggling with that. So it's an interesting thing.
It is.
And I think too that, I'm obviously in a lot of entrepreneurial circles, and, that's the majority of a lot of my friendships and connections too. And it's interesting because I think that entrepreneurship is such a magical thing. And I mean, it's not for everybody, right? That's a little asterisk. Like it is not for everybody, because it is one of the hardest things you will ever do. But it's one of the most beautiful things that you can do. And I think sometimes when I'm talking to people, and I'm actually thinking of a few people in my head right now who I've recently talked to who desperately want to go and do the thing. Whatever that is, but they're so terrified about, well, that person is so far ahead of me, and what if I like make a fool of myself and And I'm like, girl, listen, when Instagram stories came out, do you remember because those weren't a thing either when Instagram started. I remember on the travel vlog, I'd be out and doing things, and I would go and hide behind things and to record me talking to the camera. It was so awkward.
For sure. I still get that way sometimes. Like as much as I'm public as I am the weirdo that's walking down the street and I'm like, here.
I mean, there are some people who really, they are not bothered by it.
For sure.
But I am telling you, how long have you been doing it? How long have I been doing it? And still to this day, it feels weird and it feels awkward. And then, even just reels now, video content is such king, or queen, if you want to say. But so you almost have to get over that. But I do think, a lot of people it terrifies them because it is a terrifying journey. It really is. Because it's not only are you taking huge risks, right? And that's whether that's financially or not, but you're taking a huge risk in going after something that you have no idea where you're going. Because a lot of that stuff you don't know until you know, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so that's part of it. And then people are afraid of what other people are going to think. And then you're constantly comparing yourself to others. It's a challenge, I think, now. And that saddens me a little bit because like we were saying before, no one's got to figure it out. We both still struggle with this, even though we've been doing it for a long time. And honestly, that's a huge reason why, we're relaunching the women's group, but under the new name. I was kind of approaching it a little bit differently because I kept thinking to myself, what did I wish that I had when I started? What resources, what community? It's not just networking, right? Which we all can do. I think that's kind of the trap that some of us get into as well, is that you want to be out and about and meeting people. And so you go to these networking events and that you just grab a glass of wine, you talk, you go home, and that's it. And so I think it's probably my biggest passion project outside of this physical studio space is helping women get what they need so they can get from point A to point C, then to point F, then to point, and all those things. So that is something that I'm super excited about that we're going to be doing. We're going to be, obviously you'll be one down the road, and, having guest speakers come in and talk about these things and open their eyes to some of the possibilities out there, and then provide them resources. And
absolutely,
I love that. If I've never created a reel, or if I've never talked on a reel, how do I do that? What's the best way to do it?
Right.
Or, okay, I want to start a business. How do I make a business plan? What is sales? What does that look like? How do I sell myself if I've been in corporate my whole life? So, I'm really excited about that.
I'm excited.
That's what's lighting me up right now. I'm like, we're going to do so much good in this world with all of us ladies, supporting each other and doing all that. But I think, for example, just your story about, what you were doing before recording Love is Blind, and then that weird time of your life. And that, I mean, when you mentioned COVID, I was like, oh yeah, that was
Yeah.
right then. And, you know, everything that you went through, and then going, you know, like back into corporate and doing this outside and building this back up. It is a powerful story. It is a powerful story. And I cannot remember who it was, Kelly, that I was listening to the other day, but obviously I love a podcast. Kelly's is so good. But it was I think it was either Ed Milet or it may be one that was Hormozy was on. I think it was a man that was talking about this, but he said one of the biggest things that people don't share is that a lot of us are building something on top of our 9 to 5. Like you keep that as long as you can until you build this up. And they call it the 5 to 9. And you go work your 9 to 5, you come home and work your 5 to 9.
So true.
And on the weekends and stuff. And I think it's so important, and I think it's so lovely and good that you share these things, because I think that it helps people realize that what you're seeing on social media and these quote unquote overnight success things are usually products and results of years of doing that, right? Whereas back and forth, you take this and then you do this, and then, oh, well, now I got to circle back and do that. I mean, that's part of the story. I mean, there was if I'm being honest, I thought that come March of 2024, I'm letting all of these social media clients go. I'm going to just do this, and I cannot wait. I'm ready to move on. And I let several go, like, you know, fire the client thing.
Yeah.
And then when this got delayed and delayed and delayed, I was like, what the hell am I doing?
Right.
And I went, got to go back, and I had to get more clients again and because it was just not the smartest move, but it was part of the journey. Right. And,
absolutely.
And so things changed, but did I talk about that on publicly very much? No. And so it's interesting, because as we're having this conversation, I'm like, I need to be better at that. You know, I need to be, but you know, and when you said it earlier, I need to talk about that more. I think having these conversations are so crucial, because, you know, you realize those things along the way, but I think it also helps other people realize that, okay, maybe you're seeing someone on the internet who's doing really amazing things, but guess what? They may be doing this on the side, and they also may have just spent 5, 6, 7 years building that one thing.
Absolutely. Well, like too, what we were talking about earlier about that I said I had so much content in my phone that I've like just never posted.
Yes.
And it's even like I have a note section in my phone with like content ideas, right?
Too.
So many. And I think of the maybe 50 ideas, I've put a check mark next to 1 or 2 of them to see that I've completed it. But I'm like, Kelly, you really do have so many stories. Like I feel like, yes, I can pride myself on the fact that I do a decent job storytelling. And so is that my content? Maybe I just need to create, you know, like almost what people do on TikTok, where they do series, right? It's like part 900 of something, right? And it's like, maybe that's it. I don't, you know, I did start TikTok, you know, years ago when Love is Blind came out. Like it was so much I posted like 1 or 2 things, and that was it. And I've dabbled over time. But even now, I'm just like, I don't care. Like, I feel like a lot of us get into the like, well, you should be doing this, and I'm supposed to be doing that, mindset too. And it's like, yes, do I get brain deals sometimes on TikTok? Sure. And I'll like post the thing, and I'll show up there. And maybe for a week, I'll show up like once every day or 3 times a day for a week. And then for 4 months, I don't post anything, you know? And I know that I'm trying, like, obviously, the more consistent you are, the better you're going to grow your business, yada, 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 or whatever you're trying to do. You'll get some type of exposure. Like our friend Lauren, who's working at Damsel, right? Like she was posting on TikTok.
Right.
I mean, and then she got this incredible offer.
It's insane.
Yeah. Just because she was posting on TikTok. Not that she was like, oh, I'm going to be like a cabaret singer or dancer. You know, it's like, you just never know what these opportunities can offer you. But if you're hiding.
Well, and you just said something I think is really interesting when you said what you're supposed to be doing. Right. And I think that is where people get a little bit in the analysis paralysis mode, because you got, and I mean, and I know this because obviously my job, but like, you know, you got TikTok, which actually quite heavily rewards long form content. Where like the longer videos perform very well over there. And then you've got Instagram, who wants you to keep them short. I mean, the
7 seconds.
Yes, the CEO of Instagram released a video last week saying we are not going to push long form content. He came out and said that. So like, they'll let you record up to 90 seconds if you're recording in the app for the reel, and then they'll let you upload minutes long stuff, but they don't push that. They don't. So then you're like, okay, well then I'm supposed to be recording along on TikTok. I'm supposed to be recording short on Instagram. And then you get, like I said, into this analysis paralysis place.
Right.
And I think what you said is so important. I think you should just do whatever you want to do, because whatever it is that you're going to do is going to resonate with the right people.
Right.
And maybe it takes you a little longer to grow on social media, but I'm here to tell you right now, if you're listening to this, please take this to heart. I know people who have spent outrageous amounts of money on professional videos and professional photography and all this stuff. They've paid for ads and they've grown their following and all this stuff, and they're not making a dime on social media. And meanwhile, I have people who have under 2,000 followers who are crushing it and making $500,000 or more.
Right.
So I just hope that if you're one of those people that are in that, oh, I need to be doing this, and therefore I'm not going to show up because I don't have time to do it, and I don't have time to make it perfect. The people who are doing it imperfectly are the ones who are actually finding a lot more success. That's part of it too. And we were just saying before we got started how I've been kind of terrible at my own social media because I'm so busy running multiple businesses that by the time it's my turn to record for myself, I don't want to.
Right.
And then that's where I'm like, I'm not going to force myself. But you know what? I mean, business is okay. Business is good.
Right,
it's not the end of the world if I miss a few weeks. It's just the same as if you're on TikTok for a few weeks, it's not the end of the world. But I think it's like you get to this, well, I'm supposed to, and then you don't do it, and then you're afraid to get back on, and it's a vicious cycle.
What would you say to people like myself, asking for a friend, like that are very multi-passionate, very multifaceted, and it seems like, like I do this. So like I post something about mental health, but then I post just like a fashion reel, and then I'll post something about my food, and then I post something like I can see the big picture and how it all connects, but like the world may not. So it's like, can you direct, like as you being a social media manager, are there oftentimes you work with clients like that where you're like, okay, let's pick like 3 brand pillars and only create content around that?
I think you're a teeny bit different than most people because you're on the show and you've got tons of followers. So like you have the capability, I think, of doing multi things like that. Okay. But I will say that you really should, and I think it's actually a great topic because I just coached somebody who and I mean, obviously I'm not going to say who it is, but she was like a commercial actress, did little roles and shows and things like that, but like had some good success there. And then she has like gone into real estate, and her social media was a mess. Like, I mean, just a mess. Like, I'm like, no one's coming to hire you as a realtor.
Right.
Like, no one is. Because if you meet, like, she would be like, well, if you're a previous actor looking for a house, I'm like, that is not a good niche, right?
Right.
And then she posts random stuff. So we had to go down and say, okay, what is it that you truly want to do here?
Right.
Do you really want to focus on the actress stuff, or do you want to be a real estate agent? You can do both, but you're going to need 2 accounts.
Right.
They're so fundamentally different that you are going to turn off somebody there, right?
Right.
And so we had to like work with that to get her back into one thing, and then from there, okay, well, we're going to focus on real estate. Every real estate agent has an Instagram. So how are we going to make you different? And how do we get your personality into things? And then we work through things to build up her uniqueness in it and incorporate her being super comfortable on camera and doing the storytelling and things like that because of that, right? So I will say that if you are multi-passionate like yourself and like myself, I think that is almost the definition of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like we're crazy. We want to start something new every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Do we not? Same generator over here.
Like, do you know how many times I've laid in bed and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, girl, you just opened a studio. Calm down.
Oh yeah. I've had have those conversations.
And I think that's part of it. So, and then you throw ADHD on top of it. Hello. So I'm guilty of it myself, but I will say that if you're just starting out or if you're under 5 years, I would say it is very, very helpful to pick 1 or 2 things and stick with that until it becomes super profitable.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will say that what you'll find with most crazy successful people is they stick with the boring stuff for a very long time.
Right.
Right. Even if they're tired of doing it over and over and over again, something that's changed in the modern day world. Back, 20 years ago, when they would talk to you about sales and whatever it is that you were doing, and I know influencers didn't really exist back then, but let's talk about sales in terms of whatever it is that you're doing. Okay. Back then, it would take 7 touches for someone to buy from you, correct? Right? Correct. That was something that was like beaten to you all the time. 7 to 8 touches, 7 to 8 touches, right? Now they say that on average, it's like 23 to 27 touches. Because you're constantly inundated, like we were talking about before, with new people, all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have to see you multiple times. So if you're one of those people that were like, I just posted this 4 days ago, this topic, you need to post that 20 more times.
Right. Every day. 3
Yes.
times a day.
Be as repetitive as possible
Right.
on that one thing, 1 or 2 things, because as I just mentioned, people are consuming social media much differently. And so they need to repetitively see you talking about that for them to think of you in that space.
Right.
Because think about how your Instagram is curated. And I'm just gonna make something up. If you got into poker all of a sudden today, you went home and you typed in blackjack. I don't say poker because I don't know all things, but like you've got really into blackjack. And so you're like kind of like looking at things. The next day, your entire feed would start feeding you blackjack. Right. That. So if you're in the health and wellness space, or if you're a realtor, if you're something like that, you're competing with the same niche over and over again. So you have to repetitively talk about it over and over and over again. And that, my friends, is why people start shifting. Like, oh, this is not working, so I'm going to shift here. Oh, I'm going to talk about this now because I'm not getting the engagement. Yep. Because we are all guilty of wanting instant gratification.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's just part of our nature. I mean, everything is in our hand, right? Our entire life is in our hand or on our laptop.
Right.
We're used to instant gratification, right? You want something delivered, it's there in 20 minutes.
Right.
Amazon next day.
Yeah.
So we want instant gratification. So if you're building something, if you are an entrepreneur, you've been in your career, whatever that is, and if you're multi-passionate, I get that. But pick 1 or 2, and I mean, you would even say just 1. I would pick one thing and stick with it for a long time. I mean, a year or 2 years. And then once you start having really good success on that, I mean, you are going to wear yourself out. You're not going to talk about it anymore, but you have to keep talking about it because those people need to see you talking about it 20-something times.
Yeah.
And then once you get that and you're going, think about that. I did social media management. That's all I talked about for years. And then of course now I'm like studio and all that stuff. I finally got to the place where I could shift and start talking about different things. Right. But I was bored with it, but I had to keep going. So that is probably the best piece of advice I can give you. The boring stuff and the stuff that you don't want to do anymore, if you can stick with that, that is actually what's going to get you successful to be successful. I mean, it's like magic. I mean, it's crazy. And I think honestly, that's the hardest part about being an entrepreneur because we're crazy and we want to start something new every 5 minutes. I mean, every 5 minutes. I literally laid in bed last night thinking about how I was going to start something new last night. And I haven't even launched this. It's crazy. And so I feel very sympathetic to that because I'm the same exact way. Like boring stuff.
Last weekend, even I was having a conversation with a girlfriend and I was like, so I've been tossing this idea back and forth, ever since working with Erin back after the show was filming, I told you, I want to do what you're doing, right? I want to do the business and mindset coaching. And I just never went full throttle because of that shiny object syndrome, right? And I'm like, okay, maybe that's not it. Oh, let me see, the people want this. It's a lot of people pleasing for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know, a few months ago, I created a separate Instagram account for said business and mindset coaching. Yeah, well, I haven't done anything. I have 1 post on it, but it's like, it's not private, but I haven't done anything with it. So I think maybe 3 of my followers have found it just
sometimes it will suggest.
So it was like funny, but I was thinking more people would have found it or through suggestion or whatever. But I was talking to her and I was like, I just, I feel like she's like, Kelly, you already are doing so much. She's like, people are on your page because they like what you have to talk about. And like you just said, kind of because I've been on a reality TV show,
Well, you are
It-
an influencer now. I mean,
Right,
you
for
know,
sure.
Yeah.
But so she was like, Kelly, maybe you are, well, I said something, I was like, maybe I just like take on like maybe like a group coaching program, like, for 3 months or something like that, or take on a couple of like one-on-one clients. And she's like, you don't have time. So why don't you continue to do your podcast and create the content? And yeah, you may not be making money immediately doing that, but just create the content. And now you're coaching the masses through your podcast and or through social
I would
media.
100% agree.
Yeah. So
Because I would tell you that if you go to my Instagram profile, you'll see that it says helping entrepreneurs or helping some like go beyond the vision.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I have written an entire 12-week coaching program.
I have
to help people start, grow, monetize, scale their
amazing.
businesses. And it's ready. I mean,
It's rolling out.
Yeah,
It's
right?
coming. It's live.
right? I mean, but I had to take, what she was telling you,
Yeah.
that's what I had to tell myself. Girl, you just opened a brick and mortar business. You're launching this women's group that will be hosting in here. Give it like 4 or 5 months, like get this rolling and then go and do the thing. And I said, when you said I started a new account, I was like, oh, good for you, because I want to say that sometimes that is actually a great thing.
For sure.
Especially because of the way that social media has changed. And if you've had, I've had my account since 2011. Hello, that's a long time. My account's kind of dead. I've got people that followed me years ago that don't engage, right? So I've even thought about doing that myself, like creating another account when I'm ready to do that.
Right.
As if I need another one.
Right.
But, that is something so interesting that you brought that up, because giving that advice, I've had to take it for myself, right? Like it's really hard. And I know we joke about, but it's hard to be that person who has all these ideas because that they're all great ideas. Now obviously some probably wouldn't work, if you decided today that you wanted to be an astronaut,
Right.
that might be a little bit difficult
Could be.
at this stage. But it's a great idea, so I know that's super random, but it just, we are always thinking that way. What can we do? What can we do? Because that's just how we're built. Right. And that's, I think it's a cool trait to have.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you have to learn how to be so self-control, so disciplined to stay with, we were just talking about, the boring stuff.
Yeah.
Because you want to make sure that you're building sustainable things, right? Because I'm sure everyone knows this, but your average millionaire has multiple sources of income,
For
right?
sure.
Multiple streams.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, if you're not a super higher up at your 9 to 5, you're never going to be there, right? And that's why I think entrepreneurship is so magical and amazing, is because you can create all these different streams of income, right?
Yeah.
But you have to be very strategic in the way that you do it. And it's building blocks. It's like little Legos almost. You put the first one down, build your frame.
Yeah.
And then you keep that going for a while. And then when you are seeing some really good success there, and I mean sustainable, months,
yes.
years long,
Structure, systems.
yes, then you start adding on to it.
Yeah.
Then you're like, okay, let me go and create this other thing. And so I'm doing the same thing. I'm like, look, I know what I'm talking about. I've run multiple businesses. I ran 9 cities of an organization. I ran a breast cancer charity for 11 years.
Yes.
And corporate. So I know what I'm doing, and I know that I can really help people with this program. But hey, let's take a step back, focus on what you've already created,
Right.
and build upon that. And then when that is running like a well-oiled machine, then introduce these
Absolutely.
things, So that's
Yeah.
hard. And I know you're the same exact way. I know that about you, and I think it's amazing.
Thanks.
But I would say for anyone plus you,
But also
stick,
stop.
stop. Stick with the things. I think, especially with stick with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And anyone listening, whatever that is, stick with it. And I'm telling you that if you do that and you stick with the stuff that bores you, you stick with the stuff that you're tired of. Now, of course, we were talking about the first part of this, podcast about how miserable I was. And so that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
When it's misery and you don't want to wake up and go to work the next day, that's a completely different story. But if you are doing something that you've really enjoyed for a while, but you're getting quote unquote tired of it and you want something new, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's where I'm
It's lucrative, but it's
you're just exactly.
It's
You get
monotonous
bored.
at this point.
And that is what being an entrepreneur is. You get a little restless,
Right.
Because you're always creating, you're always wanting these new ideas, and you get a little bored. And that's why I call it boring, because you get a little bored in the repetitive nature of it. But that, honestly, I truly believe that in my heart of hearts, that that is what separates the winners and the losers. And I don't mean in a negative way. I'm just saying people who don't make it, you know, and I think I don't know what the exact statistic is, but I mean, it's like 90% of businesses don't survive the first 5 years. I mean, like after
for
5
sure.
years, because I think that that's number one reason people get complacent and bored, and they like, moving on to the next thing.
Oh,
you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I wanted to bring up, you mentioned just the breast cancer, I mean, pink agenda.
Yeah.
The pink agenda. So Kiera you ran that.
Yeah.
You ran the pink agenda Atlanta chapter for a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing it up because helping people, like you held on to that. You were wanting to hold on to it, right?
Yeah.
So we had a pep talk, and
I was a Kelly girl, help a girl out. Well, again, it's hard to, I wanted to hold on to that, and it wasn't the right thing.
Yeah, but so speaking of that, like totally in a different way,
Yeah.
like again, there's misery, there's boredom, whatever, but there are some times when it is the right time to let go and pivot and move. But what was coming up for you? So again, you were running this for years. It was your baby. It's so near and dear to your heart because of your mother's story, your story with your mom. And so what was it that was, like, what were you afraid to let go of? Was it the concept of pink agenda, your title, the personal story connection?
I think it's all the above, honestly. So I mean, even at college was doing anything breast cancer related, right? And so I started doing breast cancer fundraisers. And I remember, I think the first one was at like a restaurant, like in their private area. And then I had one, there's this little gala place up in Marietta off of like what road is it? Lower Roswell Road. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it was like up near my dad's house. So we knew about it. I mean, they were little. I would raise like $10,000, and I was so proud, right?
Amazing.
Right? I mean, I was so proud back then. I was like, like a 25-year-old or I don't remember how old I was when I was doing that, but and then I was doing if you remember, I was doing the Susan G 3-day walk and stuff. And I don't remember if you remember that around like 2012 when like the charity watch stuff came out and they weren't donating enough percentage wise. And so some of my donors were like, well, they're only donating 60% to actual breast cancer causes. I don't know if I really want to donate my money. Right.
Got it.
So I was in a panic mode. Well, I'm still got to do stuff. I can't let's go. And so I got online, and at the time I was calling myself saving second base or whatever. And I got online, I started doing research, and I came across this article of these 3 girls who started saving second base in New York City. But then the Breast Cancer Research Foundation partnered with them and brought them underneath their wing, and they renamed it and rebranded it and called it the Pink Agenda. Mm-hmm. And I stumbled across this press release after about 6 months of them doing this. And of course, you know me, I'm like, well, I'm going to reach out to them, Right. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, I've been doing this for several years in Atlanta. I think at that point I was raising like $65,000 at the galas or whatever. And I'm like, this is my story. This is what I'm doing. And I was like, I would love to fly up there and meet with you guys if you're open to it and see how we can expand that name down here. Cause I'm looking for a place to send this money.
Totally.
And so, they, got back to me. They're like, this is amazing. Yes, please come. And so, and I'm not going to say any names, but I had a coworker who that previous year had kind of come on and was helping with a gala. And so I did all this back end stuff. I was doing all this, whatever. I said, why don't you fly to New York with me? Because we were kind of buddies at the time. And so she came or whatever, brought it back to Atlanta, rebranded, took off, right? And it became super successful. But I will tell you that part of it, I was so passionate about it because it was letting me funnel grief through something purposeful. And let's remind you that I had a job over here that I hated, and was miserable. So this gave me purpose, right? And I felt like I was obsessive about it. I mean, it was like the only thing that I cared about, really, And so built it up, and then obviously, there was some really shady stuff that happened behind the scenes and horrific, I think, in my opinion, nasty, mean girl stuff. Mm-hmm. And broke me. I mean, that broke me. And, you know, they wanted me to, you know, stay on as an advisor or whatever. And I was so prideful, like, how dare you like do this to me, to this, whatever, because I'm like, I built this from nothing, you know, and I'm the one that has spent hours and hours and hours, and not that they weren't doing stuff too. It just, I'm like, this all came because like I wanted to do something for my mom, and I have literally for years and years and years built this up. This would not exist here without me. You didn't know about it. I mean, I'm the one that did this. And so I got super prideful, okay, about that. And I'm not ashamed to admit that. I was angry and I was mad because I was very, again, prideful that this would not exist if it wasn't for me. And then on the flip side of that, I was so hurt, devastated, broken. Like, I just feel like I'm failing or something because this happened, you know? And of course, there was like not a conversation about it. And like, we're adults, like, can we not, it was just this light switch, and I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to details or whatever, but that for me, when you're talking about like having to let something go, and you were such a huge help through that, because I couldn't see past the emotional side of it. Right. I couldn't get past that. I wanted to hold on to it like I was going to die if I let it go, you know, it was hard because, I mean, I think when you have such an emotional attachment to something like with my mom, and, you know, it's just the light of my life, and we're so close, and like having that like be ripped away from me, and then still having it dangled there, and then like me feeling obligated, like I had to keep hanging on to it because of that. And then I'm angry. I'm so angry. I mean, that bitterness that like lives inside of you, felt very betrayed, you know. And then there was another person in it that I was very, very close to who did not support me in that. And I was devastated from that too. So it just, the pride, and I don't think pride is a great thing sometimes. I think that really blinded me, you know, and it was really, I don't know if I could have even, I mean, I know I would have eventually gotten to that, but you were a huge help in that, you know, talking about that. And it's such a weird thing to think about, because like we were talking about, I mean, I quit my job, that was the right thing to do. And that was an easy peasy decision. I mean, that was a light switch for me. This was such an emotional thing. And I mean, of course, you know, once I made the decision, that was basically like, fuck you, I'm out. I mean, you'll continue this, and I'm good, you know, bless you. I'm glad.
Good luck.
But I mean, they're still running them. They don't do much. They'd have the gala every year, and it's still the same exact owners, because now it's become like a insurance event of the year. But and they've got new people. And I mean, I think it's great that there's still money being donated. Absolutely. Like that is the bottom line. Money is being donated to research. I'm super happy about that. But obviously that was a huge part of my development and story and who I am today, and like how hard that was for me. And to this day, as like part of me in this whole entrepreneur, let me start something new, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to throw a gala. We're going to start this all over again, and blah, 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 blah. I'm going to start our own nonprofit. And I have to take a step back and talk to myself internally and say, okay, Kiera, your mother is proud of you. Look what you have done. Look what you have accomplished. You are a multi-business owner. You know, you've done amazing things. You've helped women. You've raised a lot of money. You've done, like, she's proud of you.
Absolutely.
Like, stop thinking that the only way to like honor her is through a breast cancer charity. That's ridiculous. Breast cancer did not define her. It's just what took her.
Absolutely.
You know? And so that's kind of where I am now. I mean, it's hard, kind of, it's such an interesting story. I feel like I'm gonna write a book. I even like already own the URL, already have the title, like all that stuff. But like, again, but I can't yet. It's not part of it yet.
Right. I get
it. It's part of that because it was such a hard time in my life. And then what happened with the Women Project, it was like, the same thing kind of happened a little bit, except it was my decision that time to step away. So I think that there's just, there's a lot, you know, that we all go through that really, really shift who we are as people. I think that looking back during that time, I mean, I don't think I was a bad person at the time. I think that I was so wrapped up into that, and like how I reacted in that, the pridefulness, the hurt, all that stuff, it really shaped who I am right now. That, you know, me looking back and you always think like if you could go back and tell yourself things, like,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. You're going to become much better. You're going to become much more successful and all of that. It really shaped how I am today. It also shaped me in terms of how I treat people. Because, you know, I think that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Like I would never want me to be the cause of hurt like that with somebody. So I'm not thankful that it happened, but I'm thankful for what it taught me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And you've been so, like I said, resilient from the very beginning, like just taking on things like that. Because it's when something hurts your ego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, like
I was like prideful. It's my ego.
That's the same. Yeah, I mean, like when something hurts your ego like that, it is definitely like a very big wound, gaping open wound.
It lasts for a long
It lasts for a long time. You know, it's like, and I think too, you know, thank you for sharing that. But I mean, like I said, like I think just with all the, you know, social media backlash that I got and things like that, you know, from the show and whatever, and that's why I was like speaking my truth but because of my ego, right?
Yeah.
Like I knew
It's a powerful
I knew the truth, I knew the I knew what really happened, and although production didn't like stretch it that much, but you know, they did in a sense, and then I'm like getting all these like messages and stuff, and I'm like, no, that's not what happened.
Right.
Like,
and
no.
then you're like, it makes you go on the defensive.
Right.
I mean, and that is one thing that I think I think I did the right thing, and I don't, you know, like I didn't really talk about it. I didn't really tell a story. I mean, because like I know it happened, and then like the closest people around me know it happened, but I wasn't like blasting it out because, you know, you don't. I also much different than being on TV, much different. But I also like was a little bit, you know, like shamed, my ego and all that stuff too, but I also didn't want to be a victim.
Right. Which point is I have now in retrospect, like, in the moment I wanted to share my truth and everything. And I think a part of that is because, you know, I've done so much like inner child work and everything. And I'm like, to silence myself, like that's betraying. I'm abandoning myself by not telling and speaking and using my voice, right?
Yes.
But with that, in retrospect, now I'm like, well, also I understand it, and I wish that I had played their narrative a little bit better and versus I think, and to speak, the woman who was sitting next to me in that panel, that's why I felt on edge around her, because obviously I was speaking the truth, and not that she ever said anything to me, but she was part of the network. So I was like, they're all like shaking their finger, like, do not do that. Like, you're ruining what. And although that wasn't a conversation, but it's like, it is what it is now.
Hindsight is 20/20. Okay.
Right, exactly.
We know that. And sometimes when you're in the moment, you are honestly just doing the best that you can.
Yeah, exactly.
The best that you can.
But emotions were involved,
right? Oh, girl. I mean, because when I found out like the secretive and like things behind my back, I mean, I lost it. I mean, like, who do you think you are? Like, how could you do this to another human being? And so when you have that like visceral, like emotional reaction, of course, I wish I would have handled. I mean, I sent a fiery email. And of course, like, I don't even remember what it said, but I mean, I was just so angry. I was so angry. But of course, looking back, I'm like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. But I mean, I was just, it's that visceral reaction, right? And ego, pride, you're hurt. Oh my God, so hurt and betrayed and like all these things. But, you know, but again, it's what makes you who you are. And it makes you, I mean, that now, you know, next time something really difficult comes up, you're going to probably handle it a little bit of a different way because you've already gone through the way that you've handled it before. So I think that however you do handle things, I think however you process things, whatever it is, especially if you even add on failing to that. I mean, I would consider for a long time that like I failed at that or something because it didn't work out the way that I did. But oh my God, did I fail forward? Yes. And like that is part of my journey. And I think that if you think about it in terms of I didn't fail, it was just the shift, right? Because I mean, I'm sitting, you were
Yeah.
recording this episode in my studio. Like, how crazy is that? And I wouldn't have thought that that was even a possibility all those years ago when I was going through that. So,
Right.
you know, the world and universe works in a lot of different weird ways. And had that not happened, maybe I had not gone here and then here and left that career. I mean, it just, I think it's a miraculous thing. And I think you just need to trust the journey. And when you're in that shitty moment, be like, it's all right. We're going to go through because this is going to be a really, right? I mean, it's going to be a really fun story to tell one day. Yeah. So, I mean,
you show up the best you know
Yes.
how. And in those moments of high, one of my favorite mentors, she always said, when your emotions are high, your intelligence is low. Never forget that. I'm like,
that is brilliant.
it's so brilliant. Like words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that is accurate.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Because we all do that.
And
We
it's
all
interesting,
react.
growing up during, that happened. Yeah. I mean, was that 8 years ago?
Yeah.
That's crazy. But I was young, I was still young. And I mean, you learn from life experiences. I think,
Absolutely.
you learn from the experiences, but you get those experiences from making bad decisions,
Right.
or bad choices sometimes, right? That's how you build your knowledge. That's how you build your experience.
Absolutely.
So I feel like if you're afraid of that, I get it, but like embrace it a little bit, embrace it because it's just going to make you better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, this has been lovely.
It's super
I'm like, I can keep talking to you.
I'm like,
I have so many things to
like
talk to you
6
about.
hours, right?
I want you to just leave them with something. I haven't done this like with everyone, but now I just remembered. What is something you're going to do for the next 6 months to chase life?
Oh, girl. I'm gonna chase like Kelly.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I mean, a bunch of new business ventures this year, and that is my main focus. But my mom, when I was in high school and she passed away, she was 40 years old, and I just turned 40. It's been a pivotal year, and I remember stepping into this year thinking, everything I'm gonna do, I'm gonna lead with like my heart and lead with good intentions. So what I'm gonna do this next 6 months is pour myself into not only the studio, because I want it obviously to succeed, but this new Limitless Women, I am going to pour myself into making sure that every woman that I meet has the opportunity and the resources and the network to go chase life, to go chase those dreams. Because I think so many of us, I mean, I joke all the time that I was a graduate of the University of Georgia, but I was really a graduate of Google and YouTube, because I've learned everything on my own. And if I just had those things, at the beginning, or help or guidance or downloadable things that I could fill in, I may have gotten quicker, ahead a whole lot quicker. And that's what I want for people. I want, it's funny, chase. I want them to chase that.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to feel scared to. And I want to help them do that. So I'm going to pour myself into that this year. This next 6 months. So we'll say 5 because we've got 5 months of the year left. So that's what I'm going to do.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. Where can everybody find you?
Well, I guess just my personal Instagram is Kiera Palmer. It's one of the early people, so I have my full name. It's Kiera Palmer, and then Limitless Women Co. is the new women's organization, and it's obviously based in Atlanta as we kick off, but it will expand the way we did to other cities in 2025. So follow it, because big things are coming there, big partnerships and stuff too. And if you're in the Atlanta area, check out Social Studio ATL, the Social Studio.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Amazing. Thank you so much. I love you.
Honey. I love you too.